It was late October, the kind of autumn night when the cold feels sharper than it should, and every shadow seems to stretch further than the streetlights can reach. The air smelled faintly of rain and wood smoke. In Hollow Creek, a small, quiet suburb on the outskirts of a Midwestern town, life followed an unshakable rhythm. Families tucked themselves into warm houses, porch lights glowed faintly, and nothing much ever happened here. Until the night of October 28th, 2017. That night, 32-year-old Emily Harper vanished. Emily was well known in Hollow Creek. She worked the late shift at a local diner, usually walking home around the same time every night. She wasn't reckless. She stayed to lit streets, kept her phone in hand, and rarely stopped to chat on the way. Friends described her as warm, but cautious, someone who trusted, but not easily. That evening, she clocked out at 11:06 p.m. Her co-workers remembered her saying she was tired and couldn't wait to get home. She carried a paper coffee cup and had her coat folded over one arm, though the night air was already biting cold. The diner's outdoor camera captured her walking past the parking lot, heading toward Maple Avenue. A second figure appeared in the footage less than a minute later. The silhouette was tall, wearing a dark hooded sweatshirt. His face was obscured, his hands in his pockets. He didn't run, didn't rush. He simply walked the same path as Emily, keeping a steady distance. The next camera on her route had been broken for weeks. What happened after she passed into that blind spot remains one of Hollow Creek's lingering questions. By morning, Emily's sister, Natalie, noticed she hadn't come home. At first, she assumed Emily stayed with a friend, but by noon, her calls went straight to voicemail. Natalie drove Emily's usual route herself, scanning sidewalks, checking bus stops. Nothing. At 1:42 p.m., she called 911. The missing person report was filed within the hour. Police retraced her route. Near Hollow Creek Park, tucked under a bench, they found her phone. The screen was shattered, the battery removed. Just 15 yards away, on the low railing beside the path, lay her coat, folded neatly, as if placed there deliberately. The lining carried traces of an unfamiliar soil, dark and clumped, different from the park's own sandy ground. Inside the fabric, forensics found something else, a single fragment of rope, frayed and stained. Testing confirmed it was Emily's blood. The working theory shifted. This wasn't a case of someone wandering off or getting lost. This was a deliberate act. Neighbors began to speak up. One, an elderly man who walked his dog every night, remembered seeing a man leaning against the benches 2 nights earlier. Tall, hooded, staring without speaking. Another neighbor recalled hearing footsteps behind her in the park earlier that week, quickening when she did. She'd turned to look, but no one was there. As detectives pieced together the timeline, they identified 2 persons of interest. The first was Mark Lewis, 41, a drifter who often slept in abandoned sheds around Hollow Creek. He was known for hanging around the park late at night. His record included petty theft and 2 charges of assault. When questioned, Mark claimed he'd been nowhere near the park on the night Emily disappeared, but officers noticed dark stains on his boots. He said it was paint. He couldn't provide an alibi. The second was Rachel Price, Emily's co-worker and occasional friend. Rachel admitted that Emily had mentioned someone following her home in the weeks before she vanished. But Rachel hadn't reported it.
She said Emily seemed unsure if it was real or just her imagination. It later came out that Rachel had hidden the set of handwritten notes Emily received, short, threatening messages left under the diner's back door. Emily had kept them to herself, showing them only to Rachel. The notes were gone now. The search stretched on. Police and volunteers scoured the wooded areas along the creek. They walked the trails, waded through the shallow edges of the water. A small task force interviewed every known transient in the area. Flyers with Emily's face went up in grocery stores, libraries, gas stations. Every day that passed without news made hope harder to hold. November 2nd, 2017. A pair of hunters followed a deer trail into a dense thicket west of the creek. That's when they saw it. An old, leaning storage shed, its padlock rusted through. Inside, the air was stale and cold. Dust floated in the thin beam of a flashlight. Against the back wall was a wooden bench. Beneath it lay Emily Harper. Her wrists and ankles were bound with rope, the same type as the fragment found in her coat. Her knees were bent, her head turned slightly to the side. She appeared almost at rest, though she'd been dead for days. The medical examiner later determined she had died within hours of disappearing from blunt force trauma to the head.
They found a
Forensics
pair of discarded gloves, a half-empty thermos, and an old sleeping bag rolled into the corner. On the floor lay a rusted metal pipe, faintly stained. DNA testing revealed Emily's blood, and disturbingly, a mixture of other profiles. One matched Mark Lewis. But here was the problem. The shed was an informal shelter. Dozens of people had been in and out over the years. The presence of his DNA wasn't enough to prove he'd killed her. Still, the soil on Emily's coat lining provided a clue. Its mineral composition matched an active construction site west of town, one where Lewis had been seen scavenging materials. Police theorized that Emily might have been attacked near there, then brought to the shed. But without direct witnesses, the theory stayed just that, a theory. Investigators brought in criminal psychologists. Their profile suggested someone who sought not only to harm, but to control. The careful folding of her coat, the removal of the phone battery, the binding, all indicated a need for power and staging. The perpetrator wasn't in a panic. They were deliberate. Rachel Price finally admitted she'd kept the notes because she was frightened. She described them, short lines written in block letters. "You can't ignore me forever. I'm closer than you think." No signature. Police never found them. Rachel said Emily didn't want to involve police. She thought it would make things worse. The case was officially ruled a homicide. Mark Lewis was arrested on unrelated trespassing and assault charges, but released after serving a short sentence. He denies any involvement in Emily's death to this day. Emily's family holds vigils every October. They place candles along the path in Hollow Creek Park, near the bench where her phone was found. They say her case isn't cold. It's frozen, waiting for the right piece of evidence to thaw it. Some in Hollow Creek still speak of the hooded figure from the footage. They wonder if he still walks among them. Others believe it was a stranger passing through. But in a town this small, strangers are rare. And then there's the fear, the quiet fear that whoever killed Emily still lives here, that they pass you in the grocery store, that they watch from across the street, that they smile when they see you, knowing you'd never guess. When the leaves fall and the fog returns, People say Hollow Creek feels different. The air carries something heavier, the streetlights seem weaker, and if you walk the park path late enough, you might hear footsteps behind you, slow, measured, matching your own. When you turn, you might see nothing, or you might see a shadow, tall, still, waiting. Emily Harper's killer has never been found. Her story remains a warning. In Hollow Creek, darkness can follow you home, and sometimes it doesn't let go.